Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Background Information. I'm doing a creature profile this time, and as we're in the category of sea monsters, I'm going to be doing about mermaids. Now, it's an incredibly long subject, so I'm just going to keep it as brief as possible, otherwise, I'll be here for friggin' ever. And basically, whatever you're interested in, I'd suggest looking into it. If you can ever see the Discovery Channel, the mockumentary they made. That was actually quite good at pulling in a couple of different ideas. And well, in general, you can just search the term mermaid, and if you put a country to it or type of mythology to it, say, for example, Polynesian mermaid mythology, you'll be surprised where it takes you. So I'm just going to try and keep it as a basic thing here. So I'll give you the background information and then this creature profile for how they appear in my Veil universe. So I hope you can accept that. Mermaids? I didn't think they had much interaction with the Veil or the lower parliament. They've got their own court, right? Quote from the Viper King. Like dragons, unicorns, witches, and werebeasts, the mermaid is a universal creature that exists anywhere there is connection to deep water and particularly the sea. Often hailed as beautiful, siren-like, and immortalised in a Danish fairy tale, the mermaid is a being that lives in a different world to ours and yet in many ways parallels it. Whether it's the traditional half-fish, half-woman, the half-monkey fakes of the sideshow era, or the more realistic aquatic apes introduced in mockumentaries, the mermaid is something everyone has some story about or some idea of what it should look like. So what is a mermaid? Well, the correct terminology is merman, or as males are also described. Well, the correct terminology is mermen, as males are also described, but particularly females are seen. There's the common joke that they're just what lonely sailors out at sea for months just want to see out there, but often they take on the siren style of beautiful singing and luring people towards the water. Though different beings, most mermaid stories tell of the mermaid seeking a human mate to drag down into the depths with them. Depending on where you're from, depends on whether she can be human for a while, but then has to run back into the sea, or if they want to grab a man and take him to the underwater paradise where they cannot live without them, or if darker tales are to be told, bring them down to drown them. It's easy to see where mermaids and sirens link into each other, mermaids becoming more evolved over time, and mythology has generally always held the sea as a different place under different rules and bound by chaos. Chaotic primitive deities dwelt there that fought with the land. Kingdoms existed below, ruled by dragons, but filled with beauty never known. The threat of what could be out there, the fact storms could rip the ships apart and be ruled by these gods and creatures, the sea was always a place of dangerous beings. To live there would make a being dangerous, but to think there is something similar to a human ruling beneath waves seems to make sense to most. The traditional mermaid is a being half human, generally the top half, and the lower half fish. Stories of dolphins giggling and then just seeing their tails going in the water could be a cause for that. But most mermaids are heard, and only their fishy tails seen. Some of them are just omens of bad weather ahead, and some of them are the eponymous sirens luring men to their doom. In the Middle Ages, the description of them became more linked to the Nereids, Oceanids, and Naiads, linking them all to Triton with the twin fish-tailed Greek god of the sea, not to mention water nymphs and beings that exist to entice men. Per region, the mermaid has altered to sit the sea-dwelling beings around them, with beings like the Selkie and other sorts designed to trick unwary men who fall for beauty to learn their folly. As time went by, the mermaid and its ilk merged to one sea female obsessed with needing a human male to partner with in order to gain happiness, some linking to traditional European tales wherein trolls might seek a man in order to gain a soul or be redeemed, where Christianity mixes in with the tales. The tales become mingled with stories of the sea being instead being tricked into staying with the man and raising children, often treasure linked to them, or an undersea kingdom of great wealth. In all stories as time has gone by, the mermaid became sexualized and viewed as a woman that would do anything to escape the duty of wife and mother to live in the vastness of the ocean. Around the world, there are different kinds of mermaids with different links. Most think of the mermaids as Scandinavian or European. Certainly, it's linked with beings like the Slavic Rusalka, the Selkie from Ireland, and of course, a very famous Danish story. In Scandinavian folklore, they can be good or bad. The males can abduct women, and the females can be wrathful and cause storms if they are harmed. But they are deemed more akin to a water sprite and not exactly deemed humanoid. Mediterranean culture switches between the bird-like siren to the fish-like mermaid and vice versa. And some stories state Alexander the Great had a sister who turned into one, and if her question on whether he lived was answered with good news, she would ensure good sailing waters. In Chinese folklore, there are various fish creatures with human attributes that get pulled into the term mermaid, but the most curious is the Hai Renyu. I don't know if I'm saying that right, I do apologise. A being that has human sexual organs and, as an anecdote, is kept in ponds by widows and widowers to engage with. The female has a beautiful woman's head with hair like a horse, white skin like jade without jewels, covered with a sort of soft fuzz, and legless. In Korea, there are various mermaid stories pertaining to them living in an undersea kingdom, and that some even warn sailors of coming storms. In Japanese folklore, the Ningo is the generic term for the human fish beings, but these vary in size, manner, attitude, looks, and just how they link into the sea maiden stories. But though often drawn as female head-on fish body, their flesh is thought to be an elixir, and there are varying yokai with water nymph or sprite characteristics that can link in better, although the Ningo is the closer to the term mermaid. India, Thailand, and Cambodia include a princess who is depicted often in mermaid style, as well as stories about mermaid princesses and secret underwater kingdoms. African folklore includes the Mamiwata, who is certainly more linked to the siren-like manner of the seductive mermaid, and in Zimbabwean folklore there is the Njuzi, that is more linked to freshwater. The Thousand and One Nights contain stories linked to some sea-dwelling beings, and there is a siren-like creature in Caribbean tales too. Not to mention in South America, particularly Brazil, there are stories of a woman that lures men to the water, and there is a big link in these stories between the beautiful women and the river dolphins. But once more, these are more freshwater dwelling beings than sea beings. In the past century, the mermaid has been turned even more into something different and much more benevolent than the potentially flesh-eating being it could be. Although stories of the male or merman indicate them as being abductors of women akin to many other monsters to try and get women to stay away from wild areas, the mermaid herself received a tragic reimagining within the story of Hans Christian Andersen. This story has been reinterpreted many times to become the main legend of mermaids, being that a beautiful mermaid fell for a handsome prince and took a spell to put herself upon the land. But each day she walked on her human legs, she felt like she was stepping on glass, and if she did not gain the true love of the being she had desired, she would turn into bubbles. Some stories alter it, so that her sisters called her back to join them in the sea, but generally the traditional tale ends with the mermaid's heart being broken. The tale, of course, has been made into something even more extravagant and far more removed from the original Mermaid by the animated movie in the 90s. Now, the Fijian mermaid, a wonderful piece of taxidermy foolery, and the con man nature of certain entertainers have produced something that is half monkey and half fish, so very different from any of the other mermaids we talked about. They've always been an object of fascination to people, but their minute and shrunken monkey experiments certainly is not what people think of when they consider mermaids either. But this was the attempt to capitalise on the idea of mermaids as real things. It felt more like it was linking to the more nastier descriptions of mermaids, but the fact it was called Fijian has always been an amusing point, especially because to anyone not in the Pacific it sounded so foreign and exotic it could be anything, when the actual Polynesian mermaid is similar to most other tales, but there is a lot of stories about shark people we'll talk about another time. In popular culture, aside from the Little Mermaid, the mermaid has been seen as a monstrous half aquatic, half ape creature that links more to its traditional ideas as well as linking in some of the nasty lake and water monsters, or some romantic hero that dwells in the underwater sunken city of Atlantis. There are lots of interpretations and ideas that all come down to the fish-tailed beautiful lady, rather than a fish-headed one, and certainly jokes exist all over about it. I personally enjoyed the mockumentary made by Discovery Animal Planet about mermaids that did a good job of trying to explain it as a separate evolutionary branch. To be fair, you can go on forever talking about mermaids, and that's why I broke as much of it down amongst the sea monsters category. So when I speak of mermaids below, I speak of the traditional half fish, half human, breeds with humans and lures them down. Although I've always liked the more nasty looking things you can see in some stories, and indeed in some manga these days. Certainly, I've had a go at writing that sort before, so enjoy the veil version of a mermaid. Side neutral. Created by water demons mingling with other beings. Created for no particular reason. Created when before the veil. Physical description: human-like creatures with fish scales and gills, but gills with no legs, but a large tail that is fish-like. They can take on a human form to lure in humans for breeding or for eating, and appear as beautiful humans. Abilities: swim and live underwater at different depths. Some can see better in darkness than others, and as I forgot to put it on the actual piece of paper here, but I've written it down several times in other things before, because I like to try and be more real. Some species, depending on what their fish half is, will actually change gender once they reach a certain age. So, for example, anyone with the clownfish or groupers. I love groupers. They're wonderful to talk about like that. But yes, so that's included with these. Most known for swimming alongside boats to lure people into the water. Weaknesses: can't walk on land. Number unclear, as there are several kingdoms under the sea. Well-known beings: haven't decided yet. Characters and stories: haven't decided yet either. Final comments: mermaids are weird things. I never understood this constant need in folklore and mythology for a half-human being under the water. But they definitely have been very much, well, developed into like an ideal of an exotic sexual encounter more than just some creature that could eat you, especially in recent years and stuff. So they're a bit of an odd one, but you will find in paranormal romance there's actually quite a few mermaid stories. But anyway, thank you for listening.